Welcome to another episode of One on One. I am your host, Mitch Lafon, and I have got Mark Strigl of Talkin' Metal. Good day, sir, and welcome back.
Oh, thanks, man. Thanks for having me. Always great to be here.
Yeah, last episode with Mike Tramp and the Charm City Devils, neither you nor Russ were available because of scheduling and touring and all that wonderful stuff, so I had to bring on my daughter, Jada. I certainly hope you enjoyed her debut podcast. I mean, it's not bad for an 11-year-old, right?
Oh, I thought she was great. I thought she was great. You have two big fans of Jada in my house. Actually, my two sons, as you know, love Jada.
Yeah, she. I think she's born to be a kindergarten teacher or a babysitter because she takes to kids like white on rice. So it's a good thing. But speaking of good things, let's get right into the greatest thing that you and I experienced this month. Well, maybe I shouldn't speak for you, but Heavy Montreal.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. Definitely, as far as concerts go, it's one of the greatest experiences I've had concert-wise for the last year at least. I mean, wow, what a great celebration of loud, hard, and heavy music. I was only there for the second day. As you know, You were there the whole weekend.
The whole weekend with Metallica.
Yeah, but I had a blast from Exodus to Lamb of God to Body Count to Twisted Sister to Slayer. I was absolutely in heaven. I am now listening to Al Storm, who we caught a little bit of on the
Pirate
second
metal
stage there. Yeah, they're good, man. They're really good. And the audience there just so enthusiastic and such a great feeling of community, which down in the States we don't always get that. I mean, I remember we used to get that at some of the Oz Fests and Lollapaloozas back in the day, but I haven't been to Mayhem Fest, so I don't really know what goes on there, but I miss that. I miss that sense of community, and it definitely was happening there at Heavy Montreal.
Yeah, and I just listened to the bands you mentioned. You were there one day and you saw Body Count and Twisted Sister and Lamb of God and Slayer. I mean, for most fans, they'll pay 50, 60, 70, 80 bucks to see one of those bands on one night in their town. And here you're getting all of them, and that was just one day. If you add in the Saturday that I went to, I don't even have to list 25 bands. You're adding Metallica to that, and it's just a great weekend. As an American, I'm interested in what you thought of the site. It's on an island, and you've got the St. Lawrence River running right behind it. What did you actually think of the physical site?
Yeah, I thought it was great. I mean, it was you felt like you were on this island, and
an island of metal.
Yeah, I mean, even back in that VIP area where we were hanging out, you looked out over this nice pond that was on the island, and you turned around, you saw the Montreal skyline across the river. It was really a great location to be. I mean, I have no idea where I was in relationship to sites and towns around Montreal, just because I don't know that city all that well, but it felt like a great place to have a concert and a great place to have a festival and this, big sense of a heavy metal community family coming together.
And I think a lot of that has to do with the promoter, Evenko. They really put on a great show, and they treat the artist world class, first class, and they treated us as journalists very first class. I mean, you even got to eat a rabbit burger backstage.
Yeah.
You don't see that every day.
No, I've eaten rabbit 2 times, and it's never been in the United States of
or
America,
in a burger form.
Yeah, it was a burger form. Last time I ate it on top of some pasta or some weird thing in Italy. But yeah, so it was great, and honestly, I loved that feeling of being somewhere. I mean, I know you live up there, but for me, I felt out of my realm there in a good way. I felt like, wow, this is a different place. This is not the United States. This is a foreign country. This is something that I don't even know could happen in the United States in 2014. Which again, and it's not that far from the States. It took me, an hour on a plane. You can drive there from New York in 6.5, 7 hours.
Yeah, from New York City. I mean, listen, I drove up from Lake Placid, and it took me, about an hour? It's about 75 minutes, because I had gone down to see Kiss in Saratoga Springs. It's really not far. You're about 5 hours from Boston. You're about 4 hours from Albany. If you come from Buffalo and stuff, you're looking at about 8 hours. But it's really worth the trip. Now the question is, you had one experience, one day. Is this something that now that in August of 2015, it's coming again? 'Cause it comes every year. Are you going to plan your vacations around it, or was it like, it was fun this one day, thanks, but,
Oh, I plan to be there every year moving forward, and I plan to be there for both days, not just the one day, because it was a lot of fun, a great experience, and like you said, just so many bands that I've wanted to see, like even Epica, which was on the main stage. Epica played in New York, and it was like, I couldn't make it, but here, all these bands that I am interested in. Well, not all of them, but like Epica's a band I was interested in seeing, but maybe not enough to actually make it to the solo show that they were giving in the New York area. But seeing them at Heavy Montreal was just perfect, because I got that 45, 50-minute set from them. They sounded great. I enjoyed it, but yet I got all these other great bands too. So it's well worth your time, guys. I strongly, especially to you guys in the States, I strongly recommend you head up there next year in 2015, and we should all do a big Talking Metal toast and meet up at Heavy Montreal in 2015.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, you're right about seeing a band just like Epica. There's a lot of bands like that come through Montreal that I want to go to, but it's like, well, I just went to 2 shows last week. I can't go to 5 this week. And you end up skipping some. But here, like, for example, Body Count was one of the greatest performances on the day you saw. I mean, they were phenomenal.
Awesome.
But I don't know if I would pay money to go see Body Count on a Wednesday night in a club in Montreal. And that's no disrespect to the band. I think they do a great job. But I don't know if I want to make that half-hour drive into town to see them in a small club. But here they were at Heavy Montreal, and you're like, well, of course I'm going to go see them. They're playing on the front of the stage. I'm just going to walk out and go have a look. And that's what makes this festival great. And the other thing that made it great is that it runs on time. The schedule says this band is on at 1:15. They are on at 1:15. There's none of this, well, we'll start them at 1:30. Sorry for the delay. It's really run like a military operation in a good sense. And, kudos to everybody involved, the bands, the organizers, absolutely everybody. And, of course, I should send out a special thank you to Steve Zetro Souza. I did that interview with him on One-on-One a couple of weeks ago, and he said, when I get to Heavy Montreal, I'm going to come to the media tent and look for you. And I thought, yeah, sure, everybody says that, and whoever does that. And he did.
Yeah, he really did, and
what a guy!
That's
very
unheard
honorable.
of.
Absolutely
very honorable, and I'm glad he did that too, because it ended up turning into a interview for my podcast. Yeah, which you're on, actually, guys. If you're a listener of Mitch and you don't normally listen to Talking Metal, there is an episode that we just posted last week that Mitch co-hosts. I think it's episode 485. Yeah. And Steve Zetro, of course, from Exodus, is also on that episode.
And I have to say, I have to congratulate you on that. I listened to the episode, and we recorded that backstage at Heavy Montreal with all the noise of a heavy metal festival going on, and I thought, oh my Lord, his poor audio is going to sound horrible, but it absolutely sounds wonderful. I mean, the interview with Steve was very, and I don't want to sound frou-frou, but it was very charming, because here's a guy who came backstage off the cuff. There wasn't any publicist or record company. He just did it because he's a nice guy, and it just came off as a very nice, decent interview, and the audio sounds great. You really did a good job. Congratulations to you.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah,
Thanks. I appreciate it.
I really enjoyed that. It was a good episode, and I'm not saying that because I'm on it. Stop it, people. But I just thought, wow, here we are backstage with all this noise going on. How is this going to turn out? And turned out great. Now, speaking of turning out great, let's get right into today's interviews.
Absolutely.
Here's a band that, for some reason, has never been at Heavy Montreal, Poison. They had a guitarist back in the day called Richie Kotzen, and of course, Richie went on to play with Mr. Big, and eventually he ended up in the Winery Dogs, and he's got a new compilation album, 2 CDs and 1 DVD called the Essential Richie Kotzen, and it comes out in the first week of September. And I just had this really nice chat with him. Yes, I asked him about Poison. And you know what? He answered. Yes, I asked him about Mr. Big, and he reluctantly answered. He didn't seem. I think he's a little more upset with Mr. Big than with Poison. And then we spoke of the Winery Dogs. And on this new compilation, he actually takes the song "Until You Suffer Some Fire and Ice" from Poison, the Native Tongue album, and he does it as an acoustic version, and it sounds great. I mean, he's got such a feel for that sort of bluesy acoustic thing. So, it was a fun chat. Have you ever had a chance to talk to Richie?
Yeah, we had him on Talking Metal, I don't know, a year and a half, probably a year ago, because he was promoting Winery Dogs, and he's great. He's great. He's got such a great history going back to Poison. Even before that, going back to Shrapnel Records with his shred metal records, neoclassical or whatever you want to call them, with Mike Varney's label.
Right.
So quite a history, and seemed like a real great guy. And people always talk about how great of a guitar player he is, but people also talk about what a voice this guy has. He's right up there with like a Chris Cornell or Jeff Buckley or any of these guys. I mean, his voice is just, Robert Plant for that matter, his voice is just awesome.
Yeah, I think I don't think necessarily that the Poison Richie Kotzen mix was well thought out. That said, I think the Native Tongue album is seriously underappreciated, and then that live album that they put out years after that they had recorded back in the day, the Poison songs sound great with him playing on them live. So, so let's listen to Richie. And of course, stick around for part 2 because we've got Alice Cooper's new guitarist, Nita Strauss, on. But first, here's Richie Kotzen. So we're talking with Richie Kotzen. Good day, sir.
Good day. I didn't know what you said. Yes, good day.
Yes, good day. Now, you of course have had a long, storied career. You've played with Mr. Big, you've been in Poison, you've got the Winery Dogs, but more importantly, you've got a retrospective collection called Essential Richie Kotzen coming out in September. What can fans expect? Is it from all those different bands? Is it all solo? What are we getting?
Well, it's a retrospective of my solo work.
Right.
And really the whole way it came about was more a suggestion to me from the record label.
Right.
And, obviously I have a wonderful fan base that's supported me over the years and allowed me to make records and tour and do all that. And those people are fully aware of who I am and what I do as a recording artist. But there's a large demographic of people in the rock community that may know my name, but didn't necessarily follow what I did over the last 15 years. And so there's so many records out there. I guess if you looked at the fact that I started putting records out in '89, and you count them all up, you could say that I averaged a new record per year. So there's a lot of material there. And so for someone that's curious, the question is asked, where do I start? And we put together a compilation of music. I think there's about 30 compositions on there, including the videos, so that someone could go and buy one thing, and then, kind of get their head around what it is that I actually do. And then from there, if someone gets this and they like it and they're curious, you've got another 18 or 19 records that you can go back and listen to.
Yeah, which I would encourage them to go back and listen to. Now, you've got a couple of previously unreleased tracks on there, like War Paint and Walk With Me. Were these specifically made for Essential, or do these date back a few years and they were sort of lying in the vaults?
Well, they were the newest songs that I had recorded at the time, so they're not, vault material. Those are new songs, and basically, had I not done the Essential collection, they would have appeared on what would have been a solo record.
Okay.
But just the timing worked out where we were putting together this collection, and we decided we should have some new material on there, and their songs were available, so I ended up moving on them.
Yeah, now this also has Until You Suffer Some, Fire and Ice, an acoustic version, and also a couple of years ago you had a live in San Paulo album that had the song Stand, both from the Poison album that you played on. If you can, just talk to me a little bit about that experience with Poison, because it didn't seem to end as well as it started. But why are those songs still that important to you?
Well, that was an important time for me, and
okay.
I really loved the record that we made back then, and there were a collection of songs that I had written, because at the time, a lot of people don't realize, I was living in Los Angeles, I was signed to Interscope Records, and so my focus was writing for what would have been my first major label solo record back in 1990. Unfortunately, we couldn't settle on the direction. Back then, I really wanted to make more of an R&B based record, and they were headstrong in forcing me into making a hard rock record, which I really had no interest in doing. So I ended up leaving the label after a year of co-writing and hanging out in LA. And ironically enough, even though I wanted to make an R&B solo record, I ended up joining a rock band, in Poison. But I had all this material written, and so when we were writing the Poison record, I ended up bringing in a few songs, and I believe the songs I brought in, there was one called 7 Days Over You. There was another more of a rocker tune called Body Talk.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there was Stand and Fire and Ice.
Yeah.
And I always loved those two songs. And with the song Stand, it was one that I would always play in my solo set because it was a popular song. When the record was released, that song performed very well back then. So I kind of included it in my repertoire. But the Fire and Ice song really didn't get very much attention, and I always liked it. So I figured, maybe now would be a time to do a proper, at least a acoustic version of that song. And I like doing that acoustic thing because it kind of takes all the production value away, and it really comes down to the song, the guitar, and the voice.
Yeah, it's a great song. I've always loved that album, and I've always loved, especially those two songs. So it's nice to hear you do a stripped-down version of it. Now, I'm over in Montreal, and you worked with a Canadian artist back in the day named Sass Jordan. You played on her Rats album along with Brian Tishy and so on and so forth. Tell me a little bit about that experience, about working with Sass, and how did you hook up with Sass?
Well, there was a group of people back then that we were all friends, and at the helm of the little club was my buddy Stevie Salas. And Stevie was one of my first friends that I met when I moved to LA. I believe he was introduced to me through my record company when I was signed to Interscope. Right. He was someone they wanted me to work with. And then we never actually met in person until we saw each other at a music convention, and we immediately became friends. And we hung out a lot, when he lived here. And he moved out of L.A. years ago, but we still keep in touch. And he was always doing some really cool projects, and he was always been involved with really great artistic people. And so that's how I met Sass. And they asked me, I think I sang something on that record, maybe background vocals or something. But there was a lot of that going on back then where he'd call me and I'd go to a studio and sing something or play something, and sometimes I don't even know what I was playing on, but we were friends, and we just liked hanging out and being in the studio,
Yeah, she's a great artist. Speak of another great artist, and I do want to get to the Winery Dogs in a second as well. But you also played with Mr. Big and Billy Sheehan, who arguably is one of the best bass players that rock's ever had. Tell me a little bit about that experience. How was it playing with Mr. Big for those few years?
Mr. Big, not nearly as much fun as the Winery Dogs.
Okay.
I liked Mr. Big, but unfortunately at the time, that I got in the band, there definitely was some turmoil. Paul Gilbert had left the band, and I was actually already in another band with Stanley Clarke at the time, and
right.
Initially I was asked to go into Mr. Big, and I actually said no. I said no twice, to be honest, and it wasn't because I don't love the band, but I just didn't see how it would be possible for me to do the Stanley Clarke thing and do Mr. Big. But back then, they were primarily focused in Japan, so it wasn't the kind of thing that would take a lot of time. And they kind of presented it the way Poison presented it, in the sense that, look, we're not going to bring you in as a hired gun. You would be an equal member, and the fact of the matter is we're doing this tour in Japan. We need to make a new studio record that we would want you to write on, and all that stuff. So once I realized that I was going to be a real band member and not just some dude that would be told what to do, I decided to do it. And I've been friends with Billy for 20 years, so that's an easy relationship for me. He's almost like a big brother, so to speak. And I knew Eric since I was 19. I met him the first time I went to San Francisco. So, I was in the band for about 2 years, long enough to make 2 studio records and do 2 Japanese tours. But then the band fell apart, and that was the end of that.
Yeah, unfortunately, but then you, of course, you continued on with Billy, and now you've got the Winery Dogs, which I guess was sort of put together by Eddie Trunk. Is that how the story goes? He sort of suggested you to each other?
Yeah, that's the story. I was just finishing up a album cycle for my CD, 24 Hours,
right?
And I have been touring on and off for about 2 years, and I remember telling somebody that, I love what I do. I love my solo career. I'd never change that, but I feel like I'd like to take a break from Richie Kotzen, do something else, maybe collaborate with somebody. And no sooner did I say that, I got a phone call from Eddie Trunk talking about Billy Sheehan and Mike Portnoy wanting to form some kind of power trio rock band, and they wanted to know if Eddie knew anyone that could write songs and sing and play the guitar. And so my name came up, and I got on the phone with Portnoy, and eventually Billy and Mike came to my house, and we went in my garage and banged out a couple ideas, and that's where it started.
Yeah, and it turned out really well. I mean, I think, unless I'm mistaken, Gene Simmons of Kiss even tweeted out that the Winery Dogs was the best album of 2013. And
I think we got all the Kiss guys mentioning us at one. I think Paul said something, and I think according to Mike, he told me that Ace said something. And Peter, I think we got them all.
You got them all. Well, how special is that for you? Because I've read in interviews that you've given before that Kiss was sort of your inspiration to get into music. You picked up the guitar, I guess, because of Ace Frehley. Is that so?
No, because of Gene, actually. Okay. Gene Simmons was the one that I saw, because I remember taking piano lessons, and then I saw a poster of him breathing fire, and I didn't realize it was a bass hanger on his neck. And I said to my mother, "I want that. That's what I want to do." And so that's why I started playing the guitar. That combined with the fact that I saw a guitar at a yard sale, it was all kind of happening at once back then. I'm a 7-year-old kid, kind of looking for something to do, and I just clicked with the guitar. But the Gene Simmons tweet was funny because I didn't know that he actually looked at all that stuff, and I'm not very active with it, compared to Portnoy or even Billy. And so I guess I figured out how to tweet back. He had said something to the effect, we made a joke, because back then I didn't shave and had this big beard.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, shave. And I wrote back, and I put a picture up of me when I was a kid dressed up like him, and I said, this is what I look like when I shave. And he responded and said, I'm serious. He said something about what I should look like. He said, you're not in Mumford and Sons. He said, go be a rock star. He thought it was hysterical.
But I mean, obviously a great thing for especially a 7-year. So I guess putting flash pots around your piano wasn't for you, right?
Doing what?
Yeah, putting flash pots around a piano at 7 just wasn't going to cut it for you. So you needed.
Well, man, I don't know. If I would have, maybe I should have watched some Elton John videos back then. Maybe I'd be a piano player today. But it just for some reason the guitar just clicked. It was easy I could fall asleep with it. I would go to bed and kind of noodle around, and the next thing you know, I wake up in the morning and there's my guitar. That's kind of how I lived.
Yeah.
All the way into my teens, basically. Even now, sometimes. I'll fall asleep with it in the bed.
Now, the album for the Winery Dogs came out in 2013. You've done a bunch of shows. Where does this sort of go from here? Are we going into the studio? Are we doing a DVD? Are we just saying, thank you, good night, that was fun, let's back to our solo careers? What's next?
Well, a little bit of everything. Right now, I know Billy is doing some stuff with Mr. Big. Mm-hmm. I know that Mike's out touring with one of his progressive bands, and I've got this Essential collection coming out, and I'm doing a long tour for it, starting in Europe and going to South America, ending in the United States. Then, really, at the downbeat of next year, I'm releasing a new solo record, so this is all going to, roll right into the next. And the plan would be, some point early next year, to be recording some Winery Dog material so that we can release a record from the Winery Dogs by summertime and get out there and do another run. So I've got a lot in front of me as far as touring. And luckily my solo record's been finished now for a while and it's ready to go, so I don't have to worry about that. But I've got plenty of ideas for the next Winery Dog record, and I know Billy and Mike compiled a bunch of ideas, so that'll be fun getting together and seeing what we got.
The solo record that's going to come out at some point, is it instrumental or are you singing on it? Stylistically, what kind of music is it?
Oh, it's consistent with what I've been doing the last 15 years. I mean, I haven't done an instrumental record since the early 90s, so that's kind of for me to do that, it would be so foreign. I'd probably be more useful on a basketball court than making an instrumental record. But I think the new record's interesting because I've got a couple of approaches that I haven't done before. And one of the coolest things on the record is a song called You that my daughter actually wrote the majority of. It's a piano piece. Oh. And about, 3 years ago, she was playing this over and over, and I've got a piano in my house, so every time she'd sit down, she'd start playing this song. And I said, what is that? She goes, I don't know, I wrote it. And so I pulled out the microphone and said, let's record it, just so you don't forget it. So we made a really good recording of the piano and her playing it, and that lived on my hard drive for 3 years.
Wow.
And when I was going through the archives, knowing that I was going to put out a new record, I found that, and I wrote some lyrics for it. And so we're going to shoot a video for it this weekend. And that's a song I'm really excited about. The opening track I'm very excited about. It's a song called Cannibals, and it's got just a wicked bass line in it. And I did one of the more crazier guitar solos that I've done in a long time. It's a total finger-picking thing, with a clean tone that is... Right now, I'm just trying to figure out what I did because I want to play this song live. And when I hear it, I'm like, oh, man, what did I do? It happens to me sometimes. So Billy Sheehan turned me on to this program called The Amazing Slowdowner. I put my song in there, and then I could slow it down and listen to my own work to figure out what the hell I did.
You don't videotape yourself in the studio or anything, and so that you can go back and watch the videotape like they do in the NFL?
I know, because it's honestly, it's a distraction. It's kind of a pain in the ass. When I go in the studio, I don't want to be thinking about videos and social media and all that. I go to do a vocal track, and then, oh shit, I didn't turn the camera on, or it's out of focus. That just it has nothing to do with what I'm in the studio to do. If there's someone else in there filming shit, that's, whatever. But, I feel like when I'm in the studio, I don't want to be watched, I want to be in my own world. And even when we made the Winery Dog record, I remember Billy was mentioning, well, when you're doing your stuff, call me, I want to come down. I'm like, no, I don't want an audience when I'm in there in a creative mode,
right,
trying to figure out what the hell I want to do. And so basically my feeling is once I get stuff to a point where I personally can live with it, I like this is good, then, if guys in the band want to listen to it and maybe there's something that they're hearing that could elevate the song to the next level, we can entertain that. But generally, when I go in the studio, I don't have anything really worked out, I kind of rely on my instincts, and I think when someone operates that way, you got to kind of let that process develop without stepping on anything.
I agree.
And that's just been my experience, that might not be true for everyone, of course, but that's pretty much how I work.
Well, I'm as a rock fan, I have to agree with you, and that's sort of one of the reasons why I don't like pop music, is because a lot of it is too contrived. They're trying to make that single, they're trying to get that radio play, and it loses that soul, for the lack of a better word. And so,
well, it's interesting with pop music because there's an element of that, but then there's also an element of some of these guys that just really nail it, and there's a lot of pop songs that I hear that I'm like, wow, that's just fucking killer. I mean, so there's it's a different kind of craft,
Right.
It's not about, rock is a little different, especially a band. You're trying to cast a certain magic between players, and it's a whole other animal. But, there are some amazing, things that happen in the pop world that are extremely clever, and it's a situation where you have a technology-based music. You've got people that are making records that aren't necessarily musicians by the definition or by the vintage definition of the word musician. However, although they may not know how to tune a guitar, they have other concepts that can be very, very creative and very effective. So, I'm not one of those guys that likes to bash current music because I think there's still a lot of creativity there.
I guess there is some, but I would much rather listen to your album than, I don't even know who's on the radio. That's how little I listen to it. Just quickly then, before we end, the song you did with your daughter, is her playing actually going to be on the album?
Yeah, I used her piano track, so she plays the piano, I sing, and the other overdub in the song. There's one little part where I play a theremin line. It's my new instrument, but that's it. It's a very kind of haunting piece of music, and hopefully you dig it.
Yeah, that's great. That's great that you do. I just did a couple of interviews, and I had my daughter join me just because my co-hosts weren't available. So I like that. I like that feeling of doing that with the kids and stuff. And then finally, you mentioned a couple of times, we talked about Gene on Twitter and we talked about social media. How important is that to an artist these days to be on Facebook, to be on Twitter, to be on all these different social medias? Is that sort of on TV?
It depends on the artist. I mean, one of my very good friends is in a huge rock band, a legendary band. Doesn't do any social media, and he doesn't need to, because it doesn't matter. Right. Other artists that are big artists are very into it. So I mean, I think it really depends on the artist, and for someone like the Winery Dogs being a new band, it's very important, because that's how people find out about it. So right. I think nowadays, in order to build your base, it's kind of essential, the social media thing, because that's where everybody is. That's less people go to concerts, less people buy records, and more people are in front of their computer. And so that's just how our society has evolved. It's just what it is.
Well, it really is. Back in the day, sort of both when you and I grew up, we had to go out and buy Circus Magazine and Hit Parader and Metal Edge. But with the smartphones, you've essentially got that in your pocket all the time, and you can get a ping that says, oh, Richie Kotzen tweeted this and that, and you can have instant access to that information. And I think it's just vital to have. It's important, and it's great.
Absolutely.
And
Yep.
and of course, I'll remind everybody that we have to go check out the Essential Richie Kotzen and get that acoustic version of the Poison song and everything else. It's been a great pleasure speaking with you.
Awesome. Well, thank you for the interview.
Thank you, Richie. Bye-bye now.
Bye.
There you go. That was our interview with Richie Kotzen. I certainly hope you enjoyed it. And I'd like to remind you that this episode of One-on-One with Mitch Lafon is brought to you by MelodicRockFest 4 that takes place October 3rd and 4th in Arlington Heights, Illinois, and features performances by Mitch Malloy, Heaven's Edge, Seventh Heaven, Talon, Laine, Bombay Black, and many more. Head over to MelodicRockFest.com for all information. And it's brought to you by the MelodicRock.com website run by Andrew McNeese. A great site for all your melodic rock needs. And, speaking of melodic rock, I've got Nita Strauss as the second guest today. She's was in the Iron Maidens,
right?
And now has joined Alice Cooper.
Nice.
Great.
It is great, and I am looking forward to seeing her. I'm going to go see Alice at Madison Square Garden with Motley Crue. I think October is the date for that, sometime in October, and pretty good seats I think we have, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, that should be exciting. Alice had Orianthi for a while, and he really seemed to enjoy that interplay that a female guitarist brings to his stage show. And so when Orianthi left to go do that stuff with Richie Sambora and stuff, he brought in Nita. And, I haven't had a chance to see her live personally, but I've seen YouTube clips of this, and she seems to be fitting in quite well. She's certainly talented. And, of course, she spoke to us because she has a brand new website that she just launched, which is nitastrauss.com. So I encourage everybody to go check that out. And during this interview, she talks about, of course, joining Alice. She talks about projects outside of Alice. But more importantly to me is that she reflects on the life of Dick Wagner and what it was like. Yeah, what it was like when being in the dressing room with Alice when the news came in. And so, why don't we just stop talking and head over to this interview with Nita and have a listen. It's heartwarming, I think.
Cool.
We are speaking with Nita Strauss of Alice Cooper's band. Good day, Nita. How are you?
I'm so great. Thank you for having me.
So, by the way, my pleasure to have you. It's been a very exciting year for you. You got to join Alice Cooper's band. Tell me a little about how they found you and what it's been like the last few months.
Well, exciting is a great word for it, for sure. It's really been amazing. They were looking for a female guitar player when Orianthi left the band.
Yeah.
And my name got thrown in the mix, and I met with Shep Gordon and Bob Ezrin in LA, and we hit it out for a while. They sent me some songs to learn, and all of a sudden, next thing I knew, here I was on tour with Motley Crue and Alice Cooper. It's been really surreal and really, really an honor.
Yeah, because I can imagine playing all the clubs with the Iron Maidens, and then all of a sudden opening up for Motley Crue is a bit of a change.
It's a bit of a change. Yeah, I mean, I've been touring since I was 15 and done lots of, different bands before that. So it wasn't just, club gigs. And the Maidens, of course, was a great experience. And I'm so thankful to have had it and to have been a part of that for the few years that I was. And it got me ready for a stage show with a lot of props, that's for sure.
Yeah, you mentioned Shep Gordon and Bob Ezrin. Now, Shep obviously is Alice's manager and has been forever and always, so I can understand that. Why is Bob Ezrin involved in the process? Are they making a new album? Is he just there to lend some ears? How is Bob involved?
That would be a question for them more than me, really, I think. But if I was to hazard a guess why he was such a big part of it, I think it's because Bob has such an ear for the Alice Cooper sound,
right?
And what they're looking for musically in the band. Shep is the sort of mad genius mastermind of the experience,
right?
and he can put it together visually, and Bob puts it together more musically, and when I was going through my audition process, he was the one telling me what they wanted to hear more of and less of in musical terms.
How is it playing with Alice? You did mention all the props. Does that sometimes get in the way, or do you sort of have to learn to just adapt and live with it?
Well, it doesn't. I wouldn't say that it gets in the way at all. I mean, it's definitely something you have to be mindful of. But I think in any band, it's something I learned from a band that I toured with a few years ago. Is you have to always be mindful of where you are on the stage spatially and where your band members are on the stage. This is just like more stuff to be mindful of. And like I said, playing in a band like Iron Maidens, which is such a visual thing, we've got the monsters and the CO2 cannons and stuff. That I give them a lot of credit for preparing me to deal with a stage show with a lot more moving parts.
Now, have they started talking to you about recording for another album with Alice, or?
They have not. Right now, all the focus has been on this tour. It's been a very single-minded couple months for me, and it's just all been about this tour. We're doing one of the biggest tours of the year, and we're doing 72 shows with Motley, and we're out on this for most of the rest of the year, really. We've got a little break in September, and then we're really out on this for most of the rest of the year. So right now, it's just all about this tour and this gig.
Wow. Now, you were born in '86, sort of right when that whole hair metal explosion was going on, so obviously you missed a bit of it. How did you get into Iron Maiden and hard rock? And I mean, why are you not, a Tiffany fan?
Well, Tiffany was before my time too, actually.
Oh my God! Yeah, you're right. Okay.
Yeah, I think that was around the time that I was born, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it probably was. When you
I think bands like Alice and Iron Maiden and Kiss and these classic bands, even Queen, the Stones, the Beatles. There's a reason why you see so many kids wearing Beatles shirts today, and Kiss shirts and Aerosmith shirts. And this kind of music, it really transcends. It transcends age. It transcends time. And it's a crazy experience for me standing on stage playing these songs and seeing, these longtime fans that have been seeing Alice since the 70s wearing their Alice Cooper shirts, and then right next to them seeing teenagers in their brand new Alice Cooper shirts. And both of them are singing all the words to the songs. They know every nuance. They know every chord change, as well as I do. And I think seeing that it's really eye-opening. It's really a testament to how the music is really just timeless.
It really is. But what got you into the guitar? Why pick up a guitar? Why not do that, sort of cheerleader video like Britney Spears was doing? Why not get into that kind of thing? Why the guitar?
I find it so interesting that you would assume that I would be into Britney Spears, because there's everybody's into different stuff. I like some girls like Britney Spears and cheerleading. I happen to be an NFL fan and a metal fan.
Yeah. See.
So I guess it's all in how you look at things and all in how you were brought up.
Well,
I got into playing guitar from the movie Crossroads. To answer your question, there's a movie called Crossroads, not the Britney Spears one.
Right.
The Ralph Macchio movie, and there was a scene in that movie at the end of the movie where he does a guitar duel with Steve Vai, who's my favorite guitar player. It's still my biggest inspiration. And watching that, I had a guitar and I didn't really play it all that much. Like, I had just gotten in, I knew a couple chords. But when I saw that scene in the movie, that was when the switch just flipped in my head, and I was like, this is what it's all about. This is what I want to do.
Yeah, and by the way, I wasn't assuming that you're a Britney Spears fan. I'm just going with sort of the general media stereotypes that little boys pick up guitars which I think is completely ridiculous, by the way, but that seems to be how it's portrayed in all the movies and all, nonsense.
Well, it's very cool, actually. It's cool that now that you mention that, it's really gratifying for me and very cool to see a lot of young girls playing the guitar these days.
It is.
I see it a lot on the internet. People are always sending me these videos of these 9-year-old girls playing Mounds theme songs and stuff, and I think it's fantastic.
Yep.
And I just think it's so cool. And being a female guitar player isn't really weird anymore, and I love that.
And it shouldn't be. I just remember historically, or back in the years when Avril Lavigne came out and she had a guitar around her neck, people went, "Oh, what the hell is that?" And it's like, well, what do you mean, what the hell is that? It's just somebody playing rock. I mean, what's wrong
I
with that?
actually just saw her. I just saw her with the Backstreet Boys, who I do love.
There you go.
And I just saw her, and you gotta have a guilty pleasure. I saw her, and she put on a great show. Nothing but love.
Yeah, I can imagine. Now, you also were signed by the Los Angeles Kiss to be their in-house guitarist. Tell me a little bit about that experience. Does Gene and Paul come over and tell you what to do? What is exactly the gig?
Well, that was an amazing experience for me, and I got the call from Harlan Henriksen, who is the mastermind behind the Monsters of Rock brand,
right?
And he was sort of putting together this big extravaganza for the LA Kiss, and I guess he had talked to Gene and Paul, and they thought, wouldn't it be cool, instead of having a traditional organ player play like the in-game breaks and stuff,
right.
Dun 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 dun. Wouldn't it be cool to have like a guitar player doing it and kind of shredding it? And Harlan goes, wouldn't it be even cooler to have a girl guitar player doing it? And they loved the idea. And so I signed on to do that. And then a few days before the first game, Harlan called me about the national anthem. And he goes, we haven't gotten anybody to do it yet. And I said, please let me do it. I want to do it, And I just completely jumped at the chance, and to get to, be there. And like I said before, I'm a huge NFL fan, a big sports fan. So getting to, stand on the field with the team, in between the two teams, and honor America and play the national anthem, I have chills right now thinking about it. And I got to do it every week from then on until I left for this tour.
Yeah, how great is that? Now, speaking of NFL, Los Angeles doesn't have a team in terms of, NFL. So who is your favorite team?
Well, I was an LA Raiders fan growing up. So I still have a soft spot for the Raiders, but I'm a Seahawks fan.
Oh, very nice. I can respect the Seahawks. As long as you don't say Cowboys or Giants, we're all good.
No.
Now, one of Alice's guitarists in the past was, Dick Wagner, who was a personal friend of mine, an absolutely wonderful, wonderful human being and guitarist. He passed away recently.
Yes.
How was that news taken in the Alice Cooper camp? And I'm trying to ask as delicately as possible. And if I insult anybody, please forgive me. But how, the news came down. You were on tour. What happened?
It was a dark day on our bus.
Right.
That's for sure. We were in San Diego, and we got the news very early. I think Alice and his wife Cheryl were one of the first people to get the call, and we were all around. And it was a very dark day for us. And most people don't know this, but the band members, just the members of the band, Alice has his own separate routine, but the band members, before we go on stage, we all put our hands in the middle. We put our hands on top of each other and just say a few words to inspire each other and just kind of pump each other up, like a locker room huddle before the game. And ever since Dick passed on, that's been a part of our ritual before the show to say, Dick Wagner, we're doing this one for you, and he's definitely very much a part of our thoughts right now.
Yeah, and mine as well, quite frankly. Now, you get to play some of his parts on stage with Alice from Only Women Bleeds and all that. Just tell me a little bit technically about how it is to play his parts. Difficult, easy, unique? I mean, how would you describe playing his parts?
I think it's definitely a big responsibility, to play these parts with you have to give respect to the way the parts were written and recorded, even though now it's a little different because there's 3 guitar players. It's a much bigger, faster-paced show. Not bigger necessarily, but it's a much sonically bigger, faster-paced show. And, Glenn, our drummer, has described the show as playing Alice Cooper songs on steroids. Because we've had to sort of take the songs and nudge them forward in time a little bit to make them more accessible to a younger audience.
Sure.
So it's really, the challenge has been, playing these songs with, newer guitar and a newer sound, but really giving the solemnity and respect to the way that the songs are written and recorded.
Yeah, and I love the way Alice's band sounds now. And of course, let's move on to your own personal stuff now. You've got NitaStrauss.com. You just launched this new website. Sort of what are the plans with the website? Is it going to be interactive? What are we going to find there?
Well, I'm really, really excited about it. It's I've partnered up with a company called All Access, and their website is allaccess.com. And the website is live now, and each week I'm going to be doing a free video update, a guitar lesson or a tour blog or whatever it is. People are going to be able to go on and check it out. And I just got a GoPro, which I'm so excited about. I'm going to try to mount it on the guitar and do some playthrough videos like that on stage. And it's just going to be a big party, just like I like everything to be. So, and I always love getting feedback and getting suggestions. So if anyone has any suggestions, I would always invite feedback and, anything anybody wants to see or learn on Facebook or anything like that. I'd love to hear it.
Oh, that's great. That's absolutely fantastic. Once the Alice Cooper tour is over, what happens? Do you go back to the Iron Maidens? Have you quit the Iron Maidens? Sort of what's next for you while Alice is not going to be active?
Well, I was actually never a full-time member of the Iron Maiden, so there wasn't really anything for me to quit.
Okay.
But I reached out to them and I let them know that I've got a little time off. I let them know my dates, so maybe I'll jump in for a show or two. Okay. And then we pick back up with Alice next year.
Good. Sounds great. Well, it was a pleasure talking to you today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
And rest in peace, Mr. Dick Wagner, one of the greats.
Absolutely. I second that wholeheartedly. And I certainly look forward to coming to see you and Alice on the road. Nothing beats an Alice Cooper show.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Bye-bye now.
What you guys just heard was Nita Strauss, Mitch's interview with the Alice Cooper guitar player, former Iron Maiden's guitar player. Definitely go check her site out. You can hear that she is an amazing guitar player. She is also easy on the eyes. So for no other reason than that, you should go to the website.
I guess we'll have to post pictures with this episode. But the one thing I didn't ask her about was that she actually was in Femme Fatale for a while. She took over, I guess, in 2012 or 2013, and did a bunch of live shows with them. So,
cool.
Boy, one of those bands from was Femme Fatale late 80s or early 90s? I don't even remember. But
I want to say late 80s. Yeah, but I might be wrong. I'm not sure. Without Googling it. But
and of course, Nita was only born in 1986. I think Femme Fatale might have actually had their heyday and disbanded by the time before she was even born. But what are you going to do? But check out nitastrauss.com. And of course, I remind you that Melodic Rock Fest 4 is sponsoring this show, so head over to MelodicRockFest.com for all information. Mitch Malloy is on that bill. Mitch, of course, tried out for Van Halen. And if you head over to YouTube, you can actually listen to his audition tapes because he's been kind enough to post them for the world to hear. So it's interesting.
Heaven's Edge is also on the bill, the Melodic Rock bill, which is a band. When I first moved to New Jersey back in 87, it's not when I first moved here. It's actually the second time I moved to New Jersey, but I was right out of high school, and I used to head down to the Empire Rock Club in Philly and watch Heaven's Edge, and we were all sure that they were going to be like the next Bon Jovi, which never really happened, but they did put out some great music, and they had a massive following in the Philadelphia area back in those days, and good band. So I bet you they're going to be putting on a great show at Melodic Rock Fest. Yeah,
absolutely. And of course, before we wrap up, I just want to mention that there is a new Kiss tribute that I put together called A World with Heroes, the EP. It features 2 songs by the Killer Dwarfs, which of course is Russ's band. They do a version of Nothing to Lose, and what's interesting about that is that I got original Kiss pianist Bruce Foster. He played on Nothing to Lose on the 1973 or 74 album, the original Kiss album, and 40 years later he plays on this tribute. And it also has Dick Wagner with his final recording, which was a cover song of Every Time I Look at You from Revenge. And the reason I asked Dick to cover that song is because on the actual Revenge album of 1992, he played the guitar solo on Every Time I Look at You. And the reason one of the reasons the world knows that is because Dick revealed that to me in an interview years ago, and I said, hey, since you told me this first and so on and so forth, would you do a sort of a singer-songwriter, even though you didn't write this, but would you do this, your own version of it? And he did earlier this year, and unfortunately he passed away before it actually got released, but it is on iTunes now. It is called A World with Heroes, the EP, and all the money goes over to a palliative care home here in Montreal, where my wife's father passed away. So it's a very dear project to me, and of course, while you're at iTunes, I encourage you to also go check out the other A World with Heroes, the full album, 51 songs, including 3 with Peter Criss, who was kind enough to donate those songs to me last year. All the money support the palliative care home. So there you go. And again, thank you for listening. And Mark,
guys,
thank you for joining me.
You bet.
Always a pleasure.
Yes, just real quick, guys, check out TalkingMetalDigital.com.
Yes.
We post Mitch's show there in the one-on-one section. We also have my show, Talking Metal, Victor's show, Mars Attacks, and another way you can support Mitch. I definitely suggest we all go download the album on iTunes, but you can also show your support with a PayPal donation to Mitch directly using his PayPal account, which is MitchMinute.com. Just go to PayPal, type in that account, and send over a donation and show your love for One-on-One with Mitch Lafon.
Thank you, Mark. And, next year when we head out, all of us to Heavy Montreal, including all the fans, we should probably do some live podcasting from backstage and try to get some interviews. And who knows, but I'm sure we'll figure something out. But we got to get out to Heavy Montreal, everybody. There you go. Another great episode. Thank you, Richie Kotzen. Thank you, Nita Strauss. Thank you, Mark. And, of course, thank you, Russ. Hopefully you're enjoying your tour and you'll get back to us shortly. Bye now.